Hello and welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I'm here as always to talk about mind-body issues or mind-body symptoms. So what do I mean by that? I do like to start at the very beginning because some people are joining us for the first time. A mind-body symptom is something that is real physically, but begins with your mind's process. And actually a huge amount of your physical experience, anybody's physical experience, is a mind-body process. Now, there are medical issues. There are things you need to go to a doctor for. And I tell people this all the time. If you're going to work with me on mind body issues, I want to make sure you're cleared by a medical doctor. However, there is a difficult spot that people are in with this because a lot of times we'll go to a medical doctor and they'll give us a diagnosis, but some diagnoses are better than others. When it comes to life or death things, we've got to trust the doctors. They know what they're talking about when it comes to physicality and medical issues. I don't know that. But there are other issues where they'll give you a diagnosis, and it turns out that diagnosis is describing something that is erroneous, isn't actually a medical danger, and doesn't even lead to the symptoms. So I'll give you an example, a couple of examples. Herniated discs. It has been proven that they actually do not cause back pain. In clinical studies, many clinical studies, over and over and over. And it just doesn't even make logical sense. And how did we discover that? Because we studied asymptomatic people without symptoms. As we studied them, we realized there's no correlation. It's understandable that we had that logic. If something looks broken and then there's a pain there, it seems like that should match up, but it didn't always match up. A lot of those MRIs don't match up when it comes to herniated discs. The same is actually true with arthritis. We can talk more about all of this. So what that means is there's a lot of symptoms that are going kind of undiagnosed or maybe wrongly diagnosed, and people aren't getting the information they need. Well, this is what happened to me. This is why I do this work. I had I almost reduced it to 6 years. I guess I wish it was less. It was 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. Unbroken. I never had a single moment free of it, and I never had any sense that I was going to get better. So what happened? Well, I discovered or I was really introduced to this. So I'm grateful to the person who introduced me to this, who was my chiropractor at the time. He introduced me to Dr. John Sarno's works. And Sarno took me a big part of the way there. His books saved my life. His work saved my life. But I've developed a system that can get us even more specific and get us even more results. And that's nothing against Sarno, because one thing I love about Sarno is nothing he said was wrong. I can't find a crack in anything that he said. It's just that there are other things that we can say about it. And actually, I got a lot of it from Sarno. I'll get into that in a bit. I just wanted to say hi to a couple people. Rita, good to see you here. Thanks for saying hi. Basically, why are we here tonight? This is a Q&A. Why do I do a Q&A? Well, the thing that I found that I needed wasn't just the information that Sarno gave me, and it also wasn't just discovering how my emotional life could lead to symptoms, though that can happen. Absolutely. What I found is that I had lots of questions. I did not understand all of what was happening to me. And when you don't understand what's happening to you, you can stay in a state of fear or worry or confusion, or even just having these questions. It makes you feel unsettled. And what does that do? You've got a whole thought process as you're trying to think these things through. And that thought process leads to physiological changes or the lack thereof. If you're always in the same thought pattern, you continue that same process of your physicality. So now let me describe my system, especially for people who are just joining or maybe tuning in for the first time. My system is designed to get you answers about what's happening with your symptoms at any given time. And I'm talking about mind-body symptoms. Most symptoms you're going to have are going to be mind-body ones. Doctors need to be consulted at first, but once they've seen you, if they either can't figure it out or they've given a diagnosis that's actually been debunked, we can start to move into mind-body work. In the work that I do, I have 3 different ways of thinking about symptoms and why they behave the way they do. This is called the column system, or the 3-column system. And where did I get this name? I got it from this exercise that I started doing with people who would come to see me after I got better from reading Sarno and then asking my questions and getting them answered to my satisfaction. My mind was able to settle into a new way of thinking. My physiology changed and the back pain went away. And once it really clicked, it went away fast. So I did have one of those kind of book cures in a way, but also not. I read the book and it was very helpful, but I needed to work at the understanding. It's the understanding that's the true cure, not the book itself or even what the book says. It's when it clicks in you. So once I cured my own back pain, I certainly saw that it applied to other symptomatology. It's not just pain, it's all kinds of symptoms. And I started working with patients. I was a therapist already, but I started shifting my practice in this direction. And when I'd meet with somebody new, I would tell them to fill out what I called a mind-body map. And all this is a sheet of paper divided into 3 columns. That's where we get the name. And the reason I divided it into 3 columns is what I found out was this. There are 3 main reasons that we have mind-body symptoms. Dr. Sarno described one of them very well. That is the emotions column. And what he was describing is that unconscious emotions that we don't want to know about get covered over and distracted from. We don't even know about them because we are having a physical symptom. Essentially, the physical symptom is a psychological defense against knowing something that we don't want to know. He's right about that, but what I found is if I tried to apply that to all of my pain, it didn't make full sense, because I was like, okay, well, but why did I have 8 years of back pain? Why did it go on and on? I couldn't have just been having the same unconscious emotion for 8 years, could I? And I'm right about that. No, your emotions are changing all the time. That would be very unlikely. However, I got another clue in reading Sarno, and that was that if you don't accept it, he said, if you don't accept the diagnosis, you can't get better. You need to accept that, or he said the denial of the syndrome continues the syndrome. He called it a syndrome. I don't think of it that way, but I think of it more as this is human nature. And when we have a mind-body process that stays this long, it's human nature gone awry. It's gone way too far and just stays there. So as I looked at accepting the diagnosis, I came to realize that the emotions probably did start my symptoms, but the thing that continued it was my thinking. And that was the first distinction that I got in terms of columns. The emotions column describes the onset and uptick in symptoms when they first start because of that emotional experience, but what describes why they continue for 8 years or 25 years or 50 years, even for, a couple weeks. What describes that is our thinking. I had gotten into a thinking pattern where I was scared of everything and I was expecting to have back pain. And I thought that I was basically going to be crippled for the rest of my life. And that thinking was very hard to counteract because I had no reason to have any counteracting of it. There was no reason to believe it was going to stop. Everything I was being told in society was telling me the same thing. So the thought pattern continued. That's the doubt column. Okay. Second column. Emotions column is for onsets and upticks because of emotions that you don't know about. The doubt column is often about even conscious thinking, but your way of thinking perpetuates things. So long drawn out symptoms, seemingly chronic symptoms, that's the doubt column. Now I call that consistently acute. What do I mean by that? Consistent means it's always there, just like chronic, but consistently acute means it's always there, but could be broken at any moment if we get the right understanding. That's part of doubt column work. The third column I discovered actually after I got better. I got better and then I started to feel really powerful. And I found that powerful feeling helped with all kinds of things. So I was like, you know what? I think this can be applied to other ways of getting symptoms better. And then as I was talking to a particular patient, this is where the power column was born. She had a conflict about accepting the diagnosis. She could accept it. She believed it, but she didn't want to accept it. There was a conflict about that. So this was about a conflict with the self. And I came to see that the power column is about that. So you've got 3 different columns that describe 3 different reasons people have symptoms. And this allows us flexibility to understand things better. The columns are really just a way of describing how people are. But by recognizing how you are and how we all are, you get clarity. And clarity is especially key for beating symptoms. That's why we have this Q&A. During that time that I was trying to get better, I had questions that needed to get answered and they needed to be to my satisfaction, or nothing was going to change. If your mind doesn't change, your symptoms don't change. So I'm here to help you change your mind, but it's got to come from a place where you actually believe it. You can't fake it. So we have to have a discussion. This is a whole dialogue. So let's get to it. We've got some questions coming in. Karen Isaacs is here. Good to see you, Karen. Karen says, interesting, had bad runny nose all day. It stopped for the first hour of my exercise class, started the second I got back in the car. I've been thinking about what you said in group about moving on from my dad. So, Karen, I'm going to share just a little bit of that, just for context, but also to make a good comment about what you're saying. We did talk about the fact that your symptoms are presenting like power column symptoms. What do I mean by that? So, emotions column symptoms, they present as these sudden onsets and upticks, and they tend to be pretty severe in their symptomatology. The doubt column also tends to have pretty severe symptoms, but they basically stay there. It's what people consider chronic. And that speaks to thinking. But if you have very consistent but lower level, kind of annoying, persistent symptoms, what I call a symptom plateau, that's presenting like the power column. So Karen and I were looking in the power column. And what the power column means is there's some kind of conflict in yourself or something you're not at peace about. So Karen was telling me she was having this runny nose going on and on in a way that she, if I'm recalling correctly, used to have, but then it went away for a long time after she saw Sarno. But it came back at one point. And so we started looking at it. And one of the things that we hit on as a possibility, because I don't have the idea, I don't have the right idea necessarily, but I do have ideas and they can be right. You guys are going to know. So I'll put the ideas out there. You'll let me know. I put out an idea to Karen that she had an association about this runny nose. It was something her father always had. So I thought, what conflict might there be about her father? And I just know how psychology works. So I kind of wandered into this direction and asked her about it. I wondered if she was feeling like it would be hard to become more powerful than her dad ever did. A lot of times, power column symptoms are there because they want us to become powerful. They're sending us a message. So each column symptom is there for a different reason. In the emotions column, it's there to distract you. It doesn't want you to know about that. In the doubt column, it's there just to keep its place. It wants to stay in the same place and not ever move because it always wants to be able to protect you. And in the power column, your symptoms want to communicate something to you. So that's what Karen's talking about here. And Karen, this is interesting because it stopped when you were off on your own doing your own thing. But you get back in the car, maybe you're returning to something. I don't know what that is, but here's what I do know. You make sense and your symptoms make sense. So something's going on. And I want to encourage all of you that you will always find the answers somewhere in these columns. I can help you find it if you're not finding it on your own. But the columns cover everything about what goes on in you and what can happen when it comes to symptoms. So Karen, let's keep talking about it. But what I'm seeing is that you're moving in the direction of understanding this correlation. Now, she did have a follow-up, and I'm going to read that. She said, this feels right about feeling at peace. Can't put my finger on it. It's percolating. I've been thinking about moving on from my dad, feeling more powerful than my dad. I like that it's percolating. So this is a great illustration, what Karen just said, of how you can do some columns work. I want to encourage you. The columns work begin to get you clarity, but it builds. You get clarity on one thing, and you start getting more clarity about another thing, and you start to move in that direction. And the more clarity we get, the better. So in the groups, one of the things that we work on is using the group time to get as much clarity on the columns as possible. And the Q&A is great. The groups have an added benefit that we can have a lot more back and forth, and we can get further in one sitting. But the idea is still the same. We're trying to make sense of these columns and to make sense of you. And the more sense you make, the less scared you'll be. And what does that do? That brings doubt down. You must address doubt first. That's always the first thing you have to address. So if doubt has been brought down, that's when you can do the other work. I can say more about that, but what I'm hearing and what Karen's saying is something's feeling right about this. She's getting somewhere. And I really want to encourage you. Once the process starts, you start to understand more and more and more, and it starts to take shape. And it's my job to keep explaining it. And you tell me if I explain something and it's like, no, that didn't quite fit. We'll keep honing this. Okay, I want to say hi to a couple of people. Robux Studio, thank you for joining us here. N.A. Tasha is here. Sounds like it's Natasha. Good to see you here. And Rizzy Rasta Biggie Papa has joined us here as well. It is really good to see you all. Please do let me know if you have any questions. When people come in the middle, you may not know what I'm talking about. And if you want to know, just fire away, ask. I'll do a reorientation for anybody at any time. This whole thing is designed to make things make sense of what's happening in your mind and your body. And so if you've got questions, please do not be shy. Okay, we're going to jump in with Chris Atwater. Chris, good to see you. Traveling this weekend to see friends, which should be awesome, but nervous because it means a lot of public activities such as restaurants, strangers, crowds, etc. I want to enjoy the experience, but not feeling great about this. I feel super comfortable around these people, just not in a larger space. Okay, now he says their first concept was to have a Halloween themed party, but my wife explained how I would struggle with that. So we will keep it more intimate. Wish my wife didn't have to defend me, though. Just want to be comfortable. What's so bad about gatherings? Feel like a person being treated with kid gloves, not what I want. Okay, so I'm actually going to answer your last comment first, Chris. Sometimes things jump out at me in a certain order. One thing I want to encourage you about is however you are being treated or whatever's going on here is not at all permanent. This is it is a temporary experience of symptom uptick. It's almost like saying to yourself, well, I have a cold. I don't want people treating me differently. But it's easier to be treated differently for that reason, for multiple reasons. One, it's purely physical. What did you have to do with it? Or at least that's what people think. Actually, I think colds, that mind-body process has a role in whether your immune system is able to fight them off. I'll get into that a little bit later if people want to talk about it. But the point is, this is a real thing that people struggle with. You're not making it up. And if you could just make it go away, you would. But the good news is it is temporary. As you get control of doubt and bring it down, and as you get your emotions column themes in place so that you know how to control those acute symptoms as well. You bring doubt down, you can control the kind of longer running symptoms, and you get a good sense of your emotional life, and you can get rid of those acute symptoms very fast. Then you can slide over to the power column and get to a good place with yourself. And it's not as hard as you all may think, actually. There are specific things we do in each column, and I can explain more now if people have questions. But the first thing I want to say is, Chris, A, this is temporary. B, people have an easier time saying I have a cold than this because this admits emotional vulnerability. And I want to encourage you all something. We as a society have got to get better at being okay with the fact that we are all emotionally vulnerable. We all want to pretend we're not, and myself included, or at least I used to be that way. I don't think I am so much anymore, but I still am some. We don't like to reveal what's going on. But guess what? This is a big part of the reason we have symptoms. We don't want to reveal what's going on, so we mask it even from ourselves. So you are going to be comfortable. I can promise you that. And in terms of what's so bad about gatherings, I don't think it's the gatherings themselves. I think it's the exposure. So if you're feeling good about you, Chris, you're not going to care whether there's exposure. And that's why you're going to be more relaxed. Now, let me jump back to the things you were saying first, though. You said you're traveling this weekend and you're nervous because of these public activities, right? And now you're saying you're not feeling great about this. Well, how do we read this? What I'm reading, Chris, is there's a doubt here. You say not feeling great about this. And so that means that you are really saying something to yourself about your expectations. I don't blame you for this, by the way. I understand. You have real experience with some of these things going on that has not been fun. But I want you to challenge the doubt. Here's a way to do it. In the doubt column, we observe, articulate, and counter doubt. Observe means to recognize you're having a doubt. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. I don't know if you realize that was doubt. It can easily slip by you and just make you think it's not a doubt. It's just true. Because it is true you're not feeling good about this. But there's more truth than just that. It's not just that you're not feeling great about it. You're having specific thoughts about it, that you can't do this, or that it'll not work out well in this way, or that this thing will happen. So let's get those articulated. That's the next step. And then we can counter. And one thing I want to talk with you about that may help. Well, I think in the long run certainly will help, but it could even help right away. Remember what's happened in your week. Chris is a teacher, and he was struggling with his, presenting or getting in front of students. But it's been getting better, as I've heard, significantly better. And for a while, it was getting better, especially kind of, you know, middle of the week as you kind of more settled in. The start of the week sounded harder, but I want to remind you, you've already mastered parts of this experience. So, couldn't you do the same thing here? Couldn't you challenge, maybe I'm going to be okay here? I love the word maybe. You can try on success by saying, maybe with this new thought process, I'm not going to have the same experience. And Chris, you do have very different thought process available to you since we started doing this work. So there's no reason to think this is going to be bad. Here's the other thing. Don't think about the big picture. Oh my God, I have to do this, this, and this. Don't go past that first this. See if you can have a good experience just in that first one. Challenge the thought. Be in the moment with that if you can. And if you can't, go in your columns in your head and just think about it. Because even if you're not having a good time, you can at least gain information. So there's always going to be something that you can do. If you need to step away, that's okay. It's not going to stay that way. But use the columns. There's information in there that can tell you what to do. Okay. Now, one last thing. You said you wish my wife didn't have to defend me. Here's the thing. You don't need anybody to defend you if you're not attacking yourself for this. This is actually very common, what you're describing. People don't talk about it that much, but so many people are like, oh, I got to check my phone, or I got to have a drink, or I got to go. We're always doing things to manage this anxiety. Guess what? So many people have anxiety about these things. Most people do. And why is that? Because we're not comfortable with ourselves yet. The power column is very good for getting you comfortable with yourself in a way that can make it just easier to be anywhere. So I hope that helps, Chris. Please do let me know. I've said a whole lot, as I tend to do. Okay. Jane Smith says, hi, Dr. Dan and everyone. I've had the worst week in a long time. Sorry to hear that, Jane. I get my worst symptoms when I wake up at night in the morning after a nap. When I wake up at night or in the morning or after a nap. I'm so frustrated and in pain. I'm sorry, Jane. Let me see what else you said. Then you said, do you think of your 3-column system as a specialized form of CBT? I'm going to answer that in a second, but I want to see all the things that you said before I answer. Could you please give some feedback on the concept of TMS extinction burst? Okay, you got lots of good questions. And then if I'm going in the right direction with my thinking, is it true that something will get instantly better in your mind, body, or soul? It will feel like something clicked into place. Okay, great questions, but I'm going to jump back to the beginning, just about you feeling worse than you have in a long time. So when people are feeling at their worst, generally speaking, one of two things is happening when you're feeling really at your worst. What usually is happening is that doubt is raging. It's way out of control. When you're feeling really, really bad, it's usually because doubt is very high. Doubt being high makes symptoms go high, and it makes them feel stuck. Frustration is a form of doubt. So you said you're frustrated, and I totally get it, but that is a form of doubt. And what people don't often realize is that observing that doubt, knowing it is there, gives you a much better fighting chance. What doubt likes to do is convince you that it's not even doubt. It's just true. What it's saying is true. It's not true. Doubt is a pathological liar. So it's saying to you, oh, you're having the worst week in a long time. Essentially, it's saying, how are you going to get better? Look at this. Look at what a mess it is. Doubt is having a field day with you on this one, Jane. Now, the other reason, and I'm not saying that critically, I'm saying it supportively. The other reason that symptoms can go way, way up is if you're having a big emotional response. This isn't striking me that way at all, because this is some of your consistent symptoms that are always there, but they're up in general. That's a doubt column kind of thing, especially because of the severity of it. So one good, I consider it to be a piece of good news. It doesn't matter what I think, it matters what you think, but this can be helpful, is that we can describe where this comes from. You don't need to go looking in the emotions column. You don't need to go looking in the power column for this one, Jane. This is doubt. Doubt is raging. Now, what is it saying? Okay, so I'm going to have you work on that while I answer your other questions for now. Okay? So Jane says, do you think of your 3-column system as a specialized form of CBT? So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. In the therapy world, there's lots of different ways to think about therapy, but two of the main systems are CBT, which is about understanding your thoughts and kind of bringing new thoughts in to make changes. Or there's something called psychodynamic work, which is about how your experience informs you and you need to make the unconscious conscious. So the interesting thing about my column system is it's both. It does both. It does change your thinking. It does offer solutions. The action steps are all new ways of thinking that you can bring in at any time. So that's very CBT. But the emotions column has a very psychodynamic kind of process to it, where whatever's going on in the unconscious needs to be brought out and it needs to be understood. And the psychodynamic component can be very, very helpful in understanding that. Now, some people may not know what I mean by some of those words, so please ask me questions. But again, psychodynamic basically means your experience leads to how you feel, and there's an unconscious. That's the bottom line of psychodynamic. CBT is change your thoughts, it changes your behaviors and your experience. My column system does both. However, I will say this, Jane, even though there is a psychodynamic component, I think the primary work is a specialized form of CBT in a way, because CBT is more structured than psychodynamic. A lot of times you'll come in to a psychodynamic therapist session and you could talk for months about lots of good things. You could get good insights, but it's not as structured. Mine is more structured. That's a little more CBT-ish. But I never like to be boxed in. I don't like to feel that, and I don't mean you're boxing me in, by the way, Jane. I just mean ideas can box us in. And so what I like to think is the column system is kind of its own thing more than anything. It's a way of describing people, and it gets away from getting stuck in those boxes with everyone else. And so that's my thought about that. Let me know if I answered your question to your satisfaction, though. Okay, now Jane says, could you please give some feedback on the concept of TMS extinction bursts? So first of all, TMS is tension myositis syndrome. That is what Sarno called mind-body issues. You're going to hear many different names for this. Tension myositis syndrome. You're going to hear PPD, which is psychophysiological disorder. You'll hear people talk about neural pathways. You'll hear people talk about polyvagal theory. You'll hear people talk about, I'm blanking on names, but there's just tons of ways. Central sensitization is another. These are all ways that people are describing a part of the problem, but it's a part of the problem. And what I like about the column system is it describes the whole problem. So that was an aside about TMS. I do want to say hi to Jazz Sack Sailor. Thanks for joining us here. That's what TMS is. Extinction bursts, what are they? This is really a theory. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's also not clear that it is all the time, if at all. But the theory is that as you get rid of a symptom, as you get more certain about it and symptoms start to come down, sometimes the symptom can suddenly go up. That's the burst that comes with the extinction, meaning I'm getting rid of it, and then there's a sudden burst. So the way I would think about that is what that is doubt is coming in at the last minute to try to get a last minute victory. It is losing the battle. It is going to lose, but not if it can throw a Hail Mary at the end here and get you worried about it again. So, to me, when people describe extinction bursts, they're describing what they see. But describing what you see is not the same as describing why it's happening. And essentially what's happening is there's a lot of confusion between causality and correlation. So extinction bursts are a form of correlation. That happens when this happens. Causality is that happens when this happens because of this. So I'm always looking for causality. And extinction bursts to me is a correlation. It doesn't actually give you that much information. But if I tell you that's happening because doubt is trying to win a last second victory, then I'm telling you the why. That's causation. So extinction bursts are not something that are just always going to happen. You're not doomed to that at all. You don't have to have it at all. But if we want to interpret what's happening, doubt is going up. Jane, let me know if that made sense. Okay, then Jane says, if I am going in the right direction with my thinking, is it true that something will get instantly better in your mind, body, or soul. It will feel like something clicked into place. Okay. So, here's the way I think about this. There are many ways to get better. And some things are going to suddenly click into place. Some things are going to get instantly better. Some things are going to slowly but surely get better and better and better until they just die off. And the columns are actually very helpful in distinguishing this as well. In an emotions column symptom, there are two ways that it goes away. One, you never find out what the emotion is, but it just kind of drifts off and goes away on its own because you don't have that much doubt. If you have doubt, it has a chance to become a longer running symptom. But for it to go away instantly, you usually have to get a really sharp, pinpointed understanding of that emotional moment. And that can go away right away. It can just vanish. But that's one model. And that's why we need 3 columns. So many people are being given only the emotions column. And well, I would say half of an emotions column because they're not really being given the full tools that I give in the emotions column. But if you're thinking only in the emotions column and it's not vanishing, you're going to feel like you're failing or it's not working. And guess what? A lot of times that's because there's a whole different column happening here. Real Saw Shelley is here. Good to see you here. Back to you, Jane, on this question. The emotions column is when you feel things get instantly better. The doubt column does not tend to get, actually, the doubt column is mixed. In this regard, the doubt column, you can have doubt vanish all of a sudden if you really hammer a doubt well. If you observe it, articulate it, and you counter it so well that you know it's not true anymore, yes, that can vanish. But the symptom itself tends to be a little bit slower to back off and go away because belief systems just don't tend to change so dramatically over time. They can, and that's when it'll get instantly better. But a lot of times they don't. A lot of times I'm 70% convinced, so I'm generally about 70% better. Now I'm 80% convinced. I'm getting a little bit better. And it keeps going and going and going. When we're working on a seemingly chronic issue and addressing it, that's not usually going to get instantly better. We'll conquer one doubt, and then there's another doubt. Doubt is always bringing other doubts. Power column symptoms also don't get instantly better. In fact, power column symptoms tend to linger even once you've discovered them. And why is that? Because the function of power column symptoms is to communicate something to you about what you're feeling. So how does it communicate? First, it has you have the symptom so that you start paying attention. Then it keeps the symptom there long enough in that kind of low level way that's different than doubt that gets you to think about what this is. And once you realize what it is, guess what happens then? Then you've got to do emotional processing. It's kind of like we're not mourning our losses or we're not dealing with our feelings enough. And once they're there, you got to deal with it. Usually what happens with power column symptoms is you might feel that symptom for a little while, usually a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. I'm not dooming anybody to that, by the way. Mind-body issues can be changed and addressed always. We can always interpret what's going on and get you more help. So you're not stuck in anything. But, when you ask this question, something will get instantly better, Jane. I think what you're dealing with is something a lot of people deal with, which is grappling with this idea that, I bet I've read the symptoms can just vanish. That's only true in emotions column symptoms, or if there's a very specific doubt that you just nail to the wall. Those are the only times you will get instantly better from things. But there's lots of ways to get better. Jane, let me know if that made sense to you. Okay. Chris Atwater says, "You're right, Dr. Dan, and I appreciate your response." Let me see. What was I right about? I think we were talking about the temporary nature of things and how you've got new thoughts that can be applied. So Chris said, "I'm right." And he appreciated my response. Thanks, Chris. One thing I can say is I had an awkward class this week. Doubt coming in here and power diminished. We were doing live computer programming and nothing was working. Tons of issues. But I texted my wife after because even though I was flustered and embarrassed, I was not triggered. Yes, I love that. It was a crazy fun feeling and realization. So here's where you're starting to feel safe with yourself, Chris. This is going to happen in crowds, in social situations. Everywhere you go, you're going to feel safer because you're not attacking yourself in the same way anymore. That is a big deal, and that would be really exhilarating to be able to do that. You know what it reminds me of? I was once watching, I think it was Dave Chappelle was talking about this, and he was saying that he was so scared to bomb on stage, and then he did for the first time, and he thought, "This is it? This isn't that bad." And he was fine for the rest of his career when it came to that. Well, when you feel safe with yourself and that there's nothing that can really bother you all that much, you will feel safer and you'll feel better. So I'm glad that my response was helpful, though, Chris. You're making great progress. And I think you would agree with that. Since the time we've started working together on these things, you've come a long way. And actually, in a short period of time, even though it probably doesn't feel that way to you because it can be agony to suffer through these things. Thanks for the good comments, though, Chris. And I'm glad that you are getting to a place where you're not even triggered when things like that happen. Okay, Becky Louise Gornall, thank you for joining us on Instagram. And Scotty Styles is here and says hello with lots of great emojis. Thank you for sharing those. Good to see you, Scotty. Let me know if you have questions, okay? All right. Karen Isaacs says, how do we uncover things in the subconscious? Okay. This is a question that runs deep, so I'm going to give you my initial answer. But as always, guys, I've got to answer questions to your satisfaction, and you may have questions underneath questions. So if I answer something and you still wonder, keep asking your questions. Whether today, you can send me an email, dan@crushingdoubt.org. You also can get answers in some of my materials on the website, which is www.crushingdoubt.org. If you want to bring down your doubt, actually, the seminars that I do, they're 8 sessions, they're 75 minutes long, and you can get them in the middle of the night. You're never stuck with nothing you can do. You can order those right off the website. In fact, I'm going to put the links in the chat in case anybody wants them. There's the links for the seminar, for the groups. Wow, that came out kind of like a nightmare. Sorry about that. There's also an intro course, which is like if you just want an overview of what the columns are, that describes it. So lots of things to check out. Oh, there's also the mind body guides if you want some written materials that and feel like you learn better that way. But let's jump back to Karen's question. How do we uncover things in the subconscious? So there's a number of ways to do it, but actually each column is designed to do lots of different things. Okay. Each column is designed to address what they're meant to address, but they're also each opportunities to get new information. And a lot of times that information is not conscious. So in the emotions column, if you've got a symptom that has come in to protect you from understanding something emotional, how do we get to that? I'm going to go column by column, Karen. In the emotions column, those themes that you build out are meant to describe who you are and why you get upset. And as you look at when your symptoms began, the timing, you can look at that menu of the kinds of things that upset you. And it usually can allow you to get in the right ballpark. So you could say, oh, I didn't even realize I was bothered by that thing that guy said. It fits with this theme. And boom, there it is. So a lot of times things are much closer to the surface than we think. Now that's the emotions column. In the doubt column, sometimes a lot of our thoughts are conscious. We're aware of them. But what we're not conscious of is that it is doubt. We think it's just the truth. So a lot of times we have a second thought going along with that first thought. And by going through the process of the doubt column, observing, articulating, and countering, we get new information. I mean, that's all it is, pulling things out of the subconscious. It's just getting new information. Oh, I didn't realize that. Boom, you did it. Okay. In the power column, we're getting new information about ourselves, our relationship with us. And the different exercises in the columns are all helpful for this. So when you do your core narrative, there's a lot of times where people are not fully aware of how upset they are about what happened to them, or even aware of what did happen to them. So the core narrative is designed to get you the full information so you can accept the fullness of your trauma. So when you say, how do we uncover things in the subconscious? The simplest answer I can give you, Karen, is that the columns are designed to do just that. Do the work of the columns, and you're going to unearth all kinds of things. I hope that was helpful, but there's more to say. But, the bottom line is usually you need information from the outside, or you will continue doing all the same things. The columns provide you information about you from the outside that you can do for yourself. It's pretty handy, I have to say. Okay, Adriana Bucci has joined us here. Thanks so much for joining us. She has a great Instagram feed that talks about narcissists and how to get away from them. I highly recommend it. Not only do I recommend her, but I also recommend getting away from narcissists. They're horrible. And she'll tell you. She's got great one-liners and other things all the time. So thanks for joining us here, Adriana. Okay, Majida03 has joined us here as well. Good to see you. We got a couple more questions and a little bit more time. But keep the questions coming, guys. The whole idea is get you further in your information about how to understand what's going on in you. Okay. Now, I think I missed something you said, Jane, before. I want to jump back. No, it looks like I didn't. Okay. I thought I saw something else. I think no. Okay. All right. So, oh, yes, I did. Here it is. I found it. Okay. Jane said, I thought I've been having much less doubt because I was saying that her symptoms are presenting like doubt is up. I'll explain this in a second, Jane. I know how we can resolve this. I've been having much less doubt lately, so I thought maybe it was a power column issue because a lot of upsetting things happened last week and wondered if it was just an overload of stress culminating in pain, an overload of unresolved issues resulting in pain. Or maybe the severe pain was triggered by the upsetting events, but is being kept in place by a lot of doubt. Will I ever be able to heal my TMS? Okay, so Jane, you actually hit the nail on the head right now. Doubt comes in for many different reasons. I tell people that doubt has 3 different levels. Level 1 doubt is this symptom a mind-body symptom or not? And that's level 1 doubt, just trying to figure it out. Once you get it settled and you're like, this is not a purely physical process, this is a mind-body process, real in the body, but comes from the mind, then level 1 doubt is settled. Level 2 doubt is my symptom harder to conquer than others? And once you realize your symptom is just like any other, that's settled. Level 3 doubt is, can I do this? That's doubt about the self. So if you have doubt about yourself, you can't resolve that with science and logic. You can resolve level 1 and 2 doubt with science and logic. Where do you have to resolve level 3 doubt? In the power column. So here's the thing, Jane. You're right and I'm right. Because the doubt you're having that is spiking has come from a power column struggle. It's about you yourself. And that means you have progressed. Your doubt is down. Your level 1 doubt is down. I hear it. Your level 2 doubt is down. Your level 3 doubt is going up right now. And why is that? Doubt wants to protect us from anything that feels dangerous. And becoming powerful, doubt thinks is dangerous. It's not true. It actually reminds me of what Adriana talks about with narcissists. You have to get past a point where you can recognize, where you got to get past a point where you're thinking about things in a way that really just keeps your brain kind of scrambled and stuck in one place. Once you can get past it feeling dangerous and recognize, no, I'm going to override this. I'm going to think, no, that narcissist does need to be gotten away from. No, I'm not going to buy into what they're saying. You're using your brain to override something. The same has to happen here with power. We have to invite ourselves to become more powerful and to not be worried if doubt tries to mess us up. That's all that's happening here, Jane. And the fact that you had your worst week in a while, as much as I hate that for you, if you can couch it in the right understanding, you won't be so scared by that. The reason you had the worst, symptoms in a while is that your doubt is up because it is losing. And because you are on the verge of becoming powerful. Now, it doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what you think, Jane. So I want you to let me know what you think about that. Remember, whatever you've got going on in your mind, that's what you carry with you. So you could say things to yourself, but if you don't believe them, it doesn't change anything. Our job is to engage with what happens in your mind. Don't be afraid to voice if you still have skepticism. You still have doubt. It's very natural to have that. We have to engage with that process. We have to help you understand whatever's happening for you in each and every moment, because that's the thing that's going to give you confidence over level 3 doubt, that even your own mind and how you think about things isn't going to stop you. Okay, one last comment and we'll wrap up here. Jane Smith says, thanks for all your help as always. You can still make me smile even when I'm in severe pain. Well, that is high praise, but I don't want you to be in severe pain. And you don't have to be. I'm telling you, this is because doubt is up because you're working on power. If you just focus on what I just said, your worry will come down and that will bring the symptoms down. Let's keep talking. As always, guys, you can contact me, dan@crushingdoubt.org. Email me anytime. I do tell people keep the emails on the shorter side and I'll get back to you faster, but I'm always going to get back to you. I don't like to leave anybody hanging. Now, in the meantime, if you want to get even further than you can get during the Q&A, the seminars and groups are a great way to do it. The seminar, I mean, it's 8 sessions that are 75 minutes long. So we're talking about 12 hours of me hammering doubt to pieces. And that's very helpful. The reason I built these systems is because these are all the things that I wished were out there when I was suffering. I was able to get through it, but I had to do it all on my own. Sarno very much helped. And there were some other help along the way, but I had to do some of it very much on my own. So you don't have to do it on your own. The seminars can give you that information to just shrink doubt a lot. That's the first step, is shrink doubt and get an understanding of what the columns are and how they work. But when I created these seminars, what I found is that a lot of people needed more ongoing help from me. So I created these groups, and that's 3 days a week that I'm there on these Zoom calls, specifically with me. I can answer your questions. And every time we do that, it's as great as this Q&A is, because I do think it's great. We can go even further because there can be, wait a minute, what did you mean by that? Oh, did you notice that word? We get so much further. Meanwhile, you also get to see people in action applying things even more than you do here. So I highly recommend it. And I think we're seeing great results in the group. So it's been a pleasure. It's also a great group of people, very supportive. Okay. Chris Atwater says, thanks for everything, Dr. Dan. It is my pleasure. Chris, I appreciate your trust in me, and I love doing the work with you. Okay, Jane Smith says, thanks for being so reassuring. It is my pleasure. This is part of what I'm here to do. And why do I do it? In addition to the fact that it is, rewarding, and I just love doing it. It's kind of a natural fit with me. Sarno's reassurance, his certainty, was every bit as important as the science and logic that he shared. So what I found is I got it more from Dr. Sarno than anyone else, and I want to give that back to people. And now that I understand the columns so well, I can give it back because I understand what is happening. It's not just guesswork or hoping I have it right. I am extremely confident that I got the right idea about these things, and I can describe anything that's happening for you guys in the column system. So thank you so much. I will be here same time next week. It's Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific. And I look forward to talking more then. Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.